This is what Knossos looked like at its peak. 1,000 rooms, 5 stories, red columns catching the light, horns of consecration crowning every roofline. The largest building in Bronze Age Europe. It had running water, passive air conditioning, painted walls, so vivid they would not be matched for 1,000 years. 30,000 people lived in its shadow. But here is the problem. Almost everything you have seen of Knossos, in textbooks, in documentaries, on postcards, was built by one man in the 20th century, with reinforced concrete. His name was Arthur Evans, and what he created was one of the greatest archaeological achievements in history and one of its most elaborate fabrications. So, what did Knossos actually look like? To find out, we have to separate the man from the myth and the concrete from the stone. Arthur Evans was half-blind, severely nearsighted. He refused to wear glasses. The world beyond arm's reach was a blur, but anything he could hold in his hands, he saw in extraordinary detail, better than anyone. That is what drew him to the tiny seal stones coming out of Crete. Symbols carved so small, you needed a magnifying glass to read them. Evans did not need one. He could see them with his naked eye, and what he saw convinced him that an entire civilization was waiting to be found. Henry Schliemann, the man who found Troy, had tried to buy the site. He argued over the price, and then he died. Evans did not argue. In 1900, he bought the hill of Kephala on the outskirts of Heraklion and started digging. What he found stunned him. Within days, his team uncovered a stone throne, still standing where it had been placed 3,500 years earlier, the oldest throne in Europe, flanked by painted griffins, with a sunken basin in front of it, as though someone had been performing a ritual the moment the palace was destroyed. Evans knew he had something extraordinary. He called it the Palace of Minos, after the mythical king of the labyrinth. He named the civilization Minoan, and then he did something no archaeologist had done before. He rebuilt it, not on paper, not as a drawing. He poured reinforced concrete over the ruins. He hired artists to complete the frescoes from tiny fragments, filling in 90% from imagination. He erected columns, rebuilt staircases, painted walls, and he did it in the architectural style of his own era. His restoration artists were trained in Art Nouveau. The minoans they painted looked like they belonged in a Parisian gallery, not a Bronze Age palace. Elegant, stylish, modern, and largely invented. Take the most famous image from Knossos, the Prince of the Lilies. A proud figure, striding forward, wearing a crown of feathers and flowers. It is made from 9 fragments. They do not join. Modern scholars have shown they come from at least 2, possibly 3 different figures. One may be a woman. The crown probably belonged to a sphinx. Evans combined them into a single prince because that is what he wanted to see. He reconstructed another fresco as a boy gathering saffron. Later, scholars noticed the figure was blue and had a tail. It was a monkey. So, strip away the concrete, strip away the paint. What is actually there? More than Evans ever needed to invent. The real Knossos is extraordinary enough. The east wing was cut into the slope of the hill, 5 stories deep, not 5 stories up, 5 stories down. At the bottom, a grand staircase wrapping around an open light well, with red wooden columns tapering downward, wider at the top, narrower at the base, the opposite of everything the Greeks would later build. And those light wells were not just holes in the ceiling. They were engineered. Hot air rose out of the shaft. Cool air was pulled through the rooms below. Open the pier and door partitions. Maximum airflow. Close them. Privacy and warmth. Passive air conditioning. In 1500 BC, beneath the floors, a network of terracotta pipes carried water throughout the complex. Each pipe section tapered, narrower at one end. So when they locked together, the water accelerated at the joints. Faster water meant less sediment, fewer blockages. An aqueduct brought fresh water from springs 10 kilometers away on Mount Euctus. They even built settling basins at intervals along the pipe, catch pits where debris would collect before it could block the system, the same principle used in modern plumbing. On the west side, 18 storage magazines lined a corridor that ran the length of the palace, each room packed with pythoi, storage jars taller than a man, olive oil, wine, grain, wool, Tens of thousands of litres managed by an administration that tracked every drop, and they kept records, thousands of clay tablets in a script we call Linear A. We still cannot read it. At the heart of it all, the central court, 50 metres long, 25 metres wide, open to the Cretan sky. Every Minoan palace had one in almost exactly the same proportions. Whatever happened here was important enough to standardise across an entire civilization. Evans believed this is where they leapt the bulls. Evans called this a throne room, a place where a king held court. But look at it again. The room has no windows, no natural light. In front of the throne sits a sunken basin, a lustral basin, accessed by steps leading down, too shallow for bathing. The griffins on the walls are guardian creatures, not royal symbols. Nanomarinatos, one of the leading scholars of Minoan religion, proposed a different interpretation. This was not a throne for a king. It was a seat for a priest or a goddess made manifest. An epiphany. The lustral basin was for ritual purification. The griffins were divine guardians. The darkness was deliberate. This was not government. This was religion. Evans found two figurines in stone-lined pits beneath the floor of the West Wing. Women in elaborate, open-bodied dresses, holding snakes. He called them snake goddesses. They may be goddesses, they may be priestesses, they may be votary figures. We're not sure. But we know that snakes, bulls, and the double axe, the labrys, were everywhere at Knossos. The word labyrinth may come from labrys, the house of the double axe. Every pillar crypt, every shrine, every sacred space at Knossos is marked with it. It was not decoration, it was identity. Count the ritual spaces, temple repositories, pillar crypts, lustral basins, shrines. There are more religious spaces than residential ones. Evans saw a palace. The evidence points to something closer to a cathedral with a bureaucracy attached, because Knossos was also a machine. Agricultural surplus, oil, grain, wine, wool, flowed in from the countryside. Scribes recorded everything. The administration redistributed it, rations to workers, raw materials to craftsmen, surplus to trade ships bound for Egypt, the Levant, the Cyclades. Egyptian scarabs have been found at Knossos. Mesopotamian seals, Cypriot copper ingots shaped like ox hides, each weighing 30 kilograms. And Minoan frescoes have been found painted on the walls of artists were traveling to Egypt to paint for pharaohs. Inside the palace itself, workshops hummed with production, potters working fast wheels, a technology the Minoans either invented or adopted earlier than anyone in Europe. Their marine-style pottery, octopuses, nautiluses, starfish flowing across the curved surface of a vase, is among the finest ceramics ever produced by any civilization. But Knossos also held darker rituals. 8 kilometers south of the palace, in a small temple at Anemospilia, archaeologists found a scene frozen in time. A man lying on a raised platform, a bronze blade on his chest, a priest beside him, and then the earthquake struck. The building collapsed on all of them. A human sacrifice. Interrupted by the very gods it was meant to appease. The Minoans were not the gentle, peaceful aesthetes Evans imagined. They were complex, brilliant, and sometimes terrifying. So now, strip away Evans, strip away the concrete, the Art Nouveau paint, the 20th century imagination. What rises is not Evans's fantasy. It is something built from what we actually know. The west facade, dressed limestone blocks fitted precisely. Horizontal timber beams running through the walls, not for decoration, but earthquake resistance. A technology so effective it would not be rediscovered for 3,000 years. And along the roofline, stone horns of consecration. The symbol of the bull, the symbol of the sacred, visible from the road below. Descend the grand staircase. The light changes with every floor. Bright at the top, where the central court opens to the sky. Then softer, diffused, reflected off white plaster as you pass the light wells. By the lowest level, the air is cool. The gypsum floors have a translucent sheen, almost glowing. You can hear water moving in the pipes beneath your feet. Frescoes were painted in true fresco, pigment applied to wet plaster, bonding permanently as it dried. The technique demands speed, confidence, and skill. The Minoans mastered it 1,000 years before Rome, and it would not be matched again until the Italian Renaissance. And in the center of it all, the court, open to the sky. 50 meters of sunlit stone framed by painted facades rising 3 stories on every side. Mount Euctus on the horizon, the sacred mountain, the source of their water, the home of their gods. You could stand here in 1500 BC and feel for a moment that this was the center of the world, because it was. Knossos was not a palace in a field, it was the heart of a city of 30,000 people, connected by the oldest paved road in Europe to its harbour at Knossos, where ships carried Cretan oil and wine to Egypt and brought back gold. It was the administrative, religious and economic center of the first civilization in European history, and it lasted 600 years. Around 1375 BC, Knossos burned for the last time. By then, the Mycenaeans, the Greeks, had already taken control. They had been running the palace for nearly a century, keeping records in their own language, in a script we can read. Linear B, we know the names of their gods: Poseidon, Athena, Zeus, and one title that appears nowhere else: the Mistress of the Labyrinth. After the fire, no one rebuilt it. The palace that had stood for 6 centuries became a ruin, then a memory, then a myth, the Labyrinth of the Minotaur. And then, in 1900, a half-blind Englishman bought the hill and started digging. He found fragments, and he filled in the rest with concrete, and every image of the past is a reconstruction. Evans used concrete and oil paint. We use neural networks and diffusion models. The question was never whether we got it right, it was whether we were honest about what we still do not know. Knossos was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site only in 2025, 100 years late, because of the very concrete Evans poured over it. What else is hiding under the reconstruction? If you want to see us try this again, for Mycenae, for Troy, for Hattusa, subscribe. Tell us in the comments what ancient place we should reconstruct next.